All right, so that ends the recap. And now for the new things, the two new principles. We're going to start with the principle of deferred measurement. Principle of deferred measurement. So we're going to state it as it is in the textbook, which is kind of a long-winded and a little bit vague of a statement. But I'll write that down for you, and then we'll do one example of the principle of deferred measurement so you can see mathematically what it means, and then we'll prove it in the case of that particular example. So this one is a longer one. So it says measurements can always be moved to the end of a circuit. So measurements can always be moved to the end of a circuit. And if we're going to use the measurement results, we can replace classically controlled operations, controlled on the measurement outcomes, by controlled quantum operations. So the second part of this is if the measurement results are used, then classically controlled operations can be replaced by quantum controlled operations. Okay, so what does that mean? I'm going to write down the following example that we're going to prove. So this will help illustrate this. This means that, let's suppose I have a circuit, and just in a minimal case with 2 qubits, and I'm going to measure one of the qubits, and then I'm going to do a classically controlled operation on the other qubit. So remember, 1 line for qubits, quantum information, 2 line for bits. If I want to do a classically controlled operation, it would be the same thing, but like this. Okay? So what this principle of deferred measurement is telling us is that this measurement can be moved to the end of the circuit. Okay? And we are using the measurement result, so I can replace the classically controlled operation with a quantumly controlled operation. Okay? So this principle is claiming to us that these two circuits would be equal. First, just a quantum controlled U, and then the measurement at the end of the circuit. Okay? So that's an illustration for this particular example, a sort of minimal 2-qubit example of what this means. This is Nielsen and Chuang exercise 4.33. And we're going to go through this one and see why this is true in this case. So let's do that now. Going to start with the left-hand side. And let's suppose I have a general state, 2-qubit state, psi being alpha 0, 0, plus beta 0, 1, plus gamma 1, 0, plus delta 1, 1. All right? And on the left-hand side, the first thing I'm going to do is the measurement. So there's going to be some associated probability, which we could work out from this rule. But the more important thing is what is the state going to become after the measurement. And there will be 2 options for this. So we're looking at the left-hand side right now. And this initial state psi, general state, arbitrary state of 2 qubits, will get mapped to, under this measurement, the following thing. So let's have 2 cases. So in the case that I measure outcome 0, I would apply this rule for the state updates. And here I have a projective measurement, so I'm going to apply the projector to the state psi. And remember, single qubit measurement, nothing is happening to the other qubit. So there's always an implicit tensor identity. Okay? So, if you tried to do this just looking at the rule, you might say, well, this is a single qubit operator. I have a 2-qubit state. What's going on? There's always an implicit tensor identity if nothing is happening to the other qubit. So it's the same measurement rule, but it's only happening on one of the qubits, so tensor identity acting on the state psi. And then it will be the same thing down here. If we measure outcome 1, projector onto the 1 state, tensor identity acting on psi. If you work out what this is, well, I'm going to be coming at this ket psi with a bra 0. This term is going to be OK because I have a ket 0 here. This term is going to be OK, but these last two terms are going to go to 0. How do I know just looking at this that these are going to go to 0? Who can tell me what rule that I'm using? Exactly right. It's just orthogonality. So 0 inner product 0 is 1. 0 inner product 1 is 0. So that's why the last two terms go away. So I'm not even going to write those. I'm just going to know that this is going to be alpha 0, 0 plus beta 0, 1. Now the only thing I'm leaving out is the normalization, square root of p of m. So you could include that if you'd like to, but it won't change anything here. So let's just simplify and say there's an implicit renormalization. OK, so using that logic, I can do the second measurement outcome for getting outcome 1 just as well. So in this case, I'll have gamma 1, 0 plus delta 1, 1. Why is that? Just orthogonality. The bra 1 is going to kill this ket 0 and this ket 0. And then it's going to be parallel with this ket 1 and this ket 1. So those will stay. And then I'm not doing anything to the second qubit in both cases. Right? That's the tensor identity. Okay. So this is the left-hand side after we've done the measurement. So we would be here in the circuit. Now we need to do this classically controlled U operation. And so let's do that next. Classically controlled U. So this is the C of U. Well, this just says if the bit is 0, do nothing. If the bit is 1, apply U. So what's going to happen in the first line if we did measurement outcome 0? Nothing, right? So the bit is 0 in that case. So in this case, I'll stay in the state alpha 0, 0 plus beta 0, 1. Does everyone agree? And how about the second case? In this case, I would apply the unitary U to the second qubit, right? The first qubit is in the state 1. So I would have, in this case, a gamma 1 tensor, now U applied to the 0 state, plus delta 1 tensor, now U applied to the 1 state. Everyone agree? All right, so we worked out the left-hand side, and we saw the final state that we would get in both cases. Now we just need to work out the right-hand side, and so let's do that. So right-hand side. Now in this case, I'm going to do the controlled U operation first. So starting from the state psi, a general state of 2 qubits, I'm going to apply the controlled U operation to all the terms where the first qubit is in the state 1. Right? Definition of controlled U. So let's just go through and use linearity. So psi is going to get mapped under this controlled U operation to what's going to happen to the first term, alpha 0, 0. Nothing, exactly right. Why? Because the first qubit is in the state 0. So controlled U, if the first qubit is in the state 1, then do U. Well, in the first case, it's in the state 0, so I don't have to do anything. The same will be true for the second state, beta 0, 1. So plus beta 0, 1. Why? Again, because the first qubit is in the state 0, so the controlled U does nothing. How about the third term, gamma 1, 0? What happens to this state under the controlled U? Exactly right. So plus gamma 1 tensor u applied to whatever that qubit is. And here, in this case, it's the state 0. So control qubit was in the state 1. Therefore, I apply u to the second register. And you'll notice, in this case, we use the tensor notation just because it's easier to write, the u acting on the state in that case. You could see other notations for this, like, 1 with a u0 all in the same ket. That wouldn't be the best notation. So, it's easier to write out the tensor product. In this case, there's always the implicit tensor product. We're just not writing it to save ourselves some writing. Okay. Now, the last term will again be first qubit in the state 1. So I'm going to apply the u in that case. So this will be delta 1 tensor u acting on the 1 state for the last term. Does everyone agree? So we just applied this controlled u to a general 2-qubit state psi. And so that's the first step. Now the last step we have to do is the measurement. So let's do that measurement. We'll do it in a similar way. So there will be 2 outcomes, and we'll write out what both of them are. Let's call this state, for the moment, psi prime, so that I can say the following. If I measure outcome 0, then I would project 0, 0 tensor identity acting on the state psi prime, and we'll work out what that is. And in the other case, where I measure 1, I would project 1, 1 tensor identity on the state psi prime. Does everyone agree? Third postulate, this line here, again, omitting the normalization for simplicity, but it's just the third postulate, the state update rule after measurement. All right, so now we have to do the same logic. I'm going to be hitting this ket psi prime with a bra 0 from the left. So it's just the orthogonality again. If it's the case that the qubit is in the state 0, we're going to keep it. If it's in the state 1, it's going to go to 0. So in this first case, you see, I'm passing this bra 0 into this ket psi prime. So the first term is going to be OK, alpha 0, 0. Second term is also going to be OK, beta 0, 1. And now the third term, I'm in the ket state 1 on the first qubit. So the bra 0 is going to kill that. And then the same thing with the last case. So hopefully you agree. In this case, I end up with alpha 0, 0 plus beta 0, 1. And that was exactly the same as what we got when we did the operations in the reverse order. So left-hand side, we got alpha 0, 0 plus beta 0, 1. Right-hand side, we also got alpha 0, 0 plus beta 0, 1. Okay. Now we just need to do it for the last case, passing a bra 1 through this ket psi prime. The 0 terms now are going to get killed, so these will go to 0. The 1 terms will remain. So in this case, I'll have gamma 1 tensor u acting on the state 0 plus delta 1 tensor u acting on the state 1. And so in both cases, you see that we get the same results. Today I do have other colors, so let's try to use them. So on the right-hand side, we got alpha 0, 0 plus beta 0, 1 in the case that we measured 0. And that was exactly what we got on the left-hand side. So that is the same. And then for the right-hand side, we got gamma 1 tensor u0 plus delta 1 tensor u1. And that was exactly what we got on the left-hand side in the case that we measured outcome 1. So that's an illustration of the principle of deferred measurement. And in general, this is a rule that we can use in quantum circuits. Measurements can always be moved to the end of the circuit. And then if we're using those measurement results, we can replace that with a quantumly controlled version of the classically controlled operation.